This is not favor. This is mockery.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Cast of Kings, an unofficial podcast about the HBO original series, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. I'm David Chen, and I've never read George R. R. Martin's A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms.
I'm Kim Renfro, and I have read George R. R. Martin's A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms.
Kim Renfro, let's talk about the season 1 finale of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, The Morrow. Overall thoughts on the episode, Kim Renfro?
I thought this was a pretty lovely conclusion for this piece of Duncan Egg's story. More surprises for me as a book reader. We talked about this last episode, I'm pretty sure, but that there was only a handful of pages left in George R. R. Martin's story for which for what they could do. And I really, once again, was sitting there kind of like delighted and just sometimes nonplussed about like where they were going with certain changes or like how they were breaking things up, but like loved what happened with the Sir Arlen, the sole flashback that we got in this episode.
Yes.
With Sir Arlen.
So good.
So good. And yeah, once again, a lot of density, I think, to this episode. So I'm excited to talk about it and hear what you think as the non-book reader.
Yeah, definitely a denouement. It definitely feels more like an epilogue, right? There are some big decisions that happen and some big reveals, but really kind of just a big come down from the intense action of last week's episode. And tying up some loose ends, sending the characters off to where we anticipate they'll be having more adventures later on. In a very nice way. There's some really nice things about the episode. Is it as incredible as last week's episode? No, but like it's serving a very different purpose. And so at the end of the day, I think this is an extremely solid, well done season of television that manages to do its job of keeping Game of Thrones in the popular imagination in between seasons of House of the Dragon, which are going to be wrapping up, I think, relatively soon, right? We got House of the Dragon is probably going to be 4 seasons, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what they said.
Yeah, so season 3 coming soon, and then one more season after that. So anyway, let's talk about what actually happened this episode. As the episode begins, we get a little bit of a jazzy score. I do want to say, I think a lot of people will be disoriented by some of the musical choices this episode.
Yeah.
To which I would say, I think the show has always been very anachronistic with its musical choices, right? Like,
yes.
It's just been less noticeable throughout, but it's used kind of a Western whistling theme, like in episodes like 2 or 3, and obviously orchestral score for a lot of it as well. But I think it's not afraid to take music from other genres and just go hog wild with them in a way that you would never do in House of the Dragon, you would never do in Game of Thrones, right? It's just like, hey, this is more going to be a mishmash of different genres and ideas, and we're not afraid to show that, hey, we're taking music from the modern day or more contemporary music for this, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's so interesting because it was the absence of, right, like anachronism. Of course, this is like a fictional universe, but like they are largely, for the most part, like the creative teams behind these shows have skewed towards realism in terms of like medieval England. And again, like real instruments of the time. It was the reason why that episode in when Cersei blows up the Sept of Baelor in season 6 of Game of Thrones, the reason why that was so impactful, I think, and the music in that moment was because it was the first time Ramin Djawadi had ever used piano. And he specifically said he had been avoiding piano because of the anachronism that it might make audiences feel. So it is so interesting that it's a very, very specific choice that they've made in this show to just do away with that. They haven't like established that that's part of the vibe that you're feeling, basically. And as you say, from the very start of the show, they've been taking a lot of creative swings with the music. And yeah, this, I think after like the devastation of last episode, I was expecting us to like open a little bit more somber.
Somber, right. Yeah.
And to just kind of hold on Sir Lionel and his maester in that way with, this like, I think it's like a clarinet, some sort of like horn instrument, even like saxophone, with like the jazzy little background, just completely kind of like reset where I was in terms of the space in a way that like I didn't dislike, but I was a little bit like, I was like ready to stay sad about Baylor. And it felt like the show was kind of like, no, don't be that sad about it. Like we have things to do.
Yeah, I mean, last week for many people, present company included, is a very traumatizing series of events. And for the show to kind of start in this way, very disorienting, obviously intentionally so, I think.
Yeah.
But it's clear that this show is willing to break a bunch of Game of Thrones TV conventions. Mm-hmm. There is no title sequence, right? Opening credit title sequence. And nor does it try to hew especially close to musical conventions of the time or only limit itself to orchestral score. It's going after other things and using literally contemporary music. Mm-hmm. Which is something that Game of Thrones has done as well, right? Like that guy from The National did the Reigns of Castamere, right? That one.
Yeah, day, right? They did a few like credit drops.
That's right.
Of modern songs, but again, usually with a twist on a song that existed in the Game of Thrones universe already. You know, like it was like The National covering The Bear and the Maiden Fair or whatever it was. I'm forgetting. Right. If you look up an article, I'm sure I wrote about this years ago about every single one that appeared in Game of Thrones, but absolutely was like.
To be clear, I think it was The National that did Reigns of Castamere, and Hold Steady did Bear and the Maiden Fair.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
If I recall correctly, which I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, suffice to say, interesting opening with a jazzy musical sequence. Sir Lionel Baratheon and his maester arrive to check on Dunk after the trial, and Lionel offers the Hedge Knight a place in his castle. Storm's End. The two knights argue about decorum in the face of tragedy and the favor of the gods. Lionel is just DGAF about the massive consequences that have occurred in the last episode of the show. Mm-hmm. And he wants Dunk to come with him. It's very interesting that Dunk is being offered opportunities in this episode that would have been mind-blowing to him at the beginning of the series.
Yeah.
But he is declining them left and right. Shows that he has grown and refined exactly what he wants out of life during the course of the events of the show. But any thoughts on Lionel Baratheon's offer to Dunk at the beginning of the episode?
I mean, you're exactly right that it's like seeing Dunk get offered his wildest dream. Like if you imagine Lionel saying that back in the tent, like after they partied together, you know, Dunk would have been like, whew, I'm all set. Like I don't have to even like maybe necessarily enter this tournament. And I think the point of having all of those offerings brought to him in this episode is to drive home this insane guilt he's feeling over the heavily implied reality that he lied about being a knight in the first place. And it feels to me like he's having all these moments where he's like, no, like, you don't get it. I don't actually deserve that. And like, I think that he has this, it feels like he has this fear now that he's brushed so close up against history and the royal family and impacting the realm that he's like spooked by potentially, I don't know, getting further, deeper into relationships with these highborn people. That's what it felt like is happening to me here. And certainly the fact, like, I understand Dunk not really getting on board with Lionel's sort of disrespect, I guess, of the dead, or like lack of seriousness about it. And I think that this is where you see a slip of Lionel's anti-Targaryen sentiments coming through.
Any good dragon is a dead dragon. Fucking gods.
Where he says any good dragon is a dead dragon. That in itself has maybe multiple meanings, meaning like it's not possible for a good Targaryen to live very long, or like, you know, to actually get to do good things. And also this sense that like there's no valuable Targaryens in the world, and we are all better off if they're dead. Again, keep in mind that we're like only a couple generations removed from the Baratheons succeeding in taking over the throne from the Targaryens. Obviously, it's not Lionel who does that, but it's his family. So I like that inclusion of the detail. Also, the fact that he mentioned Tarth. He's like, "Have you ever been to Tarth?" That was another fun little Easter eggy moment in this scene, because
which, for those who don't remember, is what?
Yeah.
Kim, what?
So the island of Tarth is where Brienne of Tarth is from. It's part of the Stormlands, which is how Brienne in Game of Thrones came to be in Renly's service. Renly Baratheon. And yeah, this is once again the show hinting at a thing that George has only told us in, like, you know, he was like at like a Worldcon or something, but that there is ancestry shared between Sir Duncan the Tall and Brienne of Tarth. And so I loved that they took the time to be like, oh, and here's one way that Dunk might make his way to that part of the world. It's if he's ever in the good company of Lionel Baratheon again. So loved that little moment just for my brain. And Very cool. Love Lionel's cane. That was like another detail about this episode I really appreciated. I feel like we don't often see like the true aftermath of how these men have to live their lives after they've done jousting or tourneys, or in this case, a trial by combat. Like the, you know, they don't have crutches the way that we think of them now, but like they effectively like have like created like in this case, the Baratheons have stag horns that they've put together for a cane for Lord Lionel. And everyone looked quite well beaten up. I was like, this looks painful. And I appreciated that they kind of kept that throughout the whole episode and not just made it be like, oh, and we all bounced back and now we're talking about the fallout. So,
well, I think what was bothersome was they said that his wounds are beyond the maester's ability to tend to, and then it's like, oh my gosh, who's treating his wounds? And then it's literally just never addressed again, you know?
That was one of the moments that I was a little nonplussed about, because that's not in the book. And I guess like they were really trying to imply that Lionel's maester is incompetent, like that he doesn't know what he's talking about, because Dunk is not dying. They
didn't even make that really a point of tension through. Like, it would be one thing if they made it a point of tension throughout the episode of like, oh, is Dunk going to survive? Like, but they didn't do it. So it just kind of seems like just like a random bad maester situation, you know?
Yeah, in the book it says like Dunk is certainly in pain from his wounds and like has like stitches, and describes like the scar that's basically on his abdomen from where the lance I'm guessing that the actual wound wasn't like the lance punctured his side, but it broke and pushed all of the chainmail like into his skin in a way that like necessitated them to sew it back up. And in the book, he specifically reflects on the fact that Baelor, in a sense, saved his life twice. Saved his life by fighting by his side in the trial, and saved his life by pointing out that they should use boiling wine on the wound and not
instead of oil.
Right.
Yeah.
And like the implication in the book is that succeeded in stopping the wound from becoming fatal. So again, a weird little quirk of this, like a weird little change in this episode that I'm not entirely sure why it was there.
I agree.
But Dunk is not dying.
It kind of raised more questions than it answered. So it was very odd. Yeah. Anyway, atop a nearby bluff, Prince Baelor Breakspear Targaryen is burned in a funeral pyre, and Dunk speaks with his son and new heir to the throne, Valar. Is this the first time we see this character in the show, Kim?
We've seen him atop his horse, like in full armor in the tournament, but definitely the first time that we're seeing him like up close and speaking. And it's pretty similar in the books too. Like Dunk doesn't have any close encounters with Valar until this moment. And this is straight from the books. Like most of all of this dialogue, which is beautiful and sad. Except I think they added the line, plenty of sons have died in their father's armor. How many fathers have died in their sons?
Valar does ask the rhetorical question, why would the gods take him and not you? And I do think it is notable to take into context what exactly happened last episode, right? In the universe of the show, a historical alteration of the timeline.
Yeah.
Because Baelor was heir to the throne. George R. R. Martin has said that he believes Baelor would have been a good ruler and ruled well, and obviously very fair and compassionate and thoughtful. And we've seen that even in just a few brief scenes that he has shown on. He's demonstrated that on the show. And so it's extremely sad that this has happened. Also, side note, the Targaryens have no ones but themselves to blame, right? I mean, at any point, Aerion could have stopped this madness and stopped the fighting from happening. And some people have pointed out that like maybe Baelor was receiving the killing blow while Aerion was standing there just kind of chilling before he was forced to say, "I withdraw my accusation." I'm
pretty sure that's when it happened.
Yeah, like you see in the background him getting Baelor getting a mace to the head, and it's like, Darian could have not lied about Dunk's involvement with Egg, and all these, like at every single step of the way, it's been Targaryens that have been responsible for in their own doom.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the trend we see in this show, even in just the microcosm of the events of the show, and also House of the Dragon as well, right? Which is another show that we discuss on this podcast. So, I think there's a kind of Shakespearean tragedy to they are the ones that have created their own downfall. But it is a massive development that has occurred in the last episode of the show. And yeah, Kim, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on like how massive it is without while trying to avoid as many spoilers as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think you summarized it very well with what we know from what George has said, what we know from like this segment of the written Targaryen histories is that yes, that Baelor was widely considered to be a very beloved and capable and level-headed hand of the king in his current stead, and like teed up to be a very benevolent is the word that comes to mind, but like just a good king. And the fact that he died in such a like surprising and quick manner, like people have pointed out in the funeral scene, you can see that his father, King Daeron, is there. So I think the implication here is that at least like a day has passed, like enough time for someone to send word and bring back the king to Ashford Meadow. But it is absolutely meant to be one of a few, I think, sort of like dominoes that fall in the Targaryen line of succession, and in a way that, yes, that George, I think, is trying to paint this picture of the way that Targaryens like keep getting in the way of themselves. And I think that it's tied in these themes to this notion of like fatherhood and what it means to be a family, what it means to like what you are passing down from father to son. And like this sense of I don't know, almost like complacency that it feels like the Targaryens get sometimes, where it's like we are like that there are certain Targaryens like Aerion who feels invincible, like feels like nothing bad can really happen to us because we are so powerful and because we are the blood of the dragon and like we shall get our way. And it's very clear that just leads to more tragedy and torment down the line for everyone, for like for House Targaryen, and then now like the realm will suffer, or presumably will suffer because we don't have him. So
it's interesting that in House of the Dragon we get an inside look at all that, and then here it's an outside look, right? Like we're looking at it externally. So it's two different perspectives on kind of similar dynamics. Anyway, Dunk wanders back through the tourney meadow where everyone is steadily packing up and leaving Ashford. Raymond spots him and reveals that he was married to Rowan, one of the sex workers Dunk met in the very first episode. And she has convinced him that she is with child and that it's his.
I know.
So,
Raymond is a little sweet summer child, I think.
Anyway, she said I've got her with child now, so I figured we ought to get married.
I think the implication there is that he's just too young to know any better and like thinks like, oh, if you have sex once, like that can mean she's pregnant, which I know technically it can, but like not immediately, dude.
He probably doesn't understand the timeline, how the timeline of pregnancy works. But then again, not that many people back then did, perhaps.
Right. Not that many people did. This is an entirely invented scene for the show, which I very much loved. Like, I was almost crying when Raymond went and hugged Dunk.
Yeah.
It was just such a needed moment for Dunk, I think, needed for me. I was like, yeah, someone go reassure that man. And I love their friendship. Like, Raymond doesn't appear really at all after Baylor. Like, he helps take Baylor's helmet off, and then like that's the last we really get a mention of Raymond in the Hedge Knight novella. So I really like what they've done with the character throughout the show has been amazing in terms of like making him like really be a friend to Dunk and really show up when it matters. Multiple hugs that they've plopped in here, because I remember he was waiting with the horses beneath Dunk's tree after he got released. They changed that slightly from the book too. Like in the book, Dunk just hears his horses in the camp and notices that they're by Raymond's tent and goes in and he's like, oh my God, thank you. You have my horses. The fact that they made it in the show that like Raymond was like waiting in the rain for him and like, I'm just keeping watch by your horses. And like, I'm so relieved to see you, and they hug. And this was a similar moment where I was like, I just love this character. I love what he represents in terms of allyship to Dunk. And then the change too with this character Rowan. I love how they like, it feels like Rowan and Dunk are kind of like sizing each other up with just their eyes and like agreeing to not say anything about the truth of the situation in a way that is like, you know, it almost feels to me like she watched what Dunk did at this tournament, which is go from being like a lowly hedge knight squire potential imposter to being, you know, in the history books, basically, to being a key part of this massive event and effectively winning his knighthood through just proving that he can do it. And it feels like she was also like, oh, maybe I can raise my station a little bit here. Like maybe I can find an opportunity to become something more than what the cards were currently dealt for me. So I really enjoyed this scene. And I love, like, I feel like her and Raymond have like a genuine chemistry to one another that's very sweet. That like, even if she doesn't mean a word of it, I'm like, there are worse things you could do than show some love to a little freshly knighted. Also, his green apple shield. That's what I was going to bring that up. I wanted to mention that about shield design. Scene. Cool shield design, and that is from the books, but his new shield is revealed right before the trial. It's like he comes up to Dunk's side and he's like, oh, sorry, I was almost late there. I had to fix my shield real fast, because he's saying like, oh, even in battle, I need to distinguish myself apart from my cousin, and he picks the green apple. I was missing that a little bit last episode, or even like episode 4. I thought they might do it, and I was really delighted to see them insert that here, because all of the heraldry has been really cool throughout this season.
Agreed. So Maekar summons Dunk, surprising him by asking him to be a knight at Summerhall and to keep Egg as his squire. Dunk refuses, and in a hallway conversation, Egg tells him that maybe he's not the knight he believed he was. Gotta say, great scene, great conversation with Maekar, and it's a situation where Maekar, you've seen him in the show in a very bad light in the show so far, and then this scene illustrates just like a whole other side of him, where this must take a lot of will for Maekar to not only be okay with Dunk, like be willing to be in the same room as Dunk without being angry at him or whatever, but also willing to take Dunk in as basically part of his family, pretty much. Huge offer, right? For this guy who like previously has been basically an asshole on the show, to make. And I think the Makar performance this episode is just really strong. It just shows you people aren't just one thing, Kim. You know, they can be assholes to lowly knights that they see in court, and also be willing to do anything to make sure their kids develop in a good way.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on here, I think. Thoughts?
Yeah. This beautiful scene from Makar, and both actors who play Dunk and Makar in this scene. Really, yeah. This is the good stuff to me of these shows.
Yes.
Is when you find two people who just like really seem to embody these fantastical characters, but with like such like a genuine humanity to them, and like the grief that they're both sharing in this moment. You know, Dunk didn't know Baylor for very long, but he very much I was about to say like fell in love with him, but like, you know, like I think that Dunk immediately recognized Baylor as a great man and a great leader, and certainly saw that in his actions of like stepping up to his side. And the fact that both Dunk and Makar effectively take ownership for part of what happened, even though, as we were just discussing, really like Arion had most of the power here. Like if anyone's gonna be blamed, one would think it was Arion. But the fact that both Dunk and Makar are like really taking the weight upon themselves here was beautifully done. And they changed up this from the books a little bit. In the books, Dunk is like laying under his tree, injured, you know, trying to heal, and the guards like approach him and say like, the prince wants to speak to you, and he's kind of like, uh-oh, like what prince? I think I'm probably gonna die. And then Makar steps out and makes this offer. So it certainly is like that tension there of like Makar could probably do anything he wanted to Dunk, and the fact that this is the offer that he gives says a lot, as you say, about his character, that he's certainly a complicated man. And I think that before this episode aired, if we were just analyzing like the fight itself and looking at what was going on, I think some people might have argued like, we don't really know who killed Baylor, or maybe Makar did it on purpose and like used the trial as cover to kill his brother and, you know, try to further his own cause or something. But I was absolutely buying what Makar is selling in this moment, of that, like, he's positive that it was his mace that dealt the fatal blow, but he like did not intend for that to be happening.
Right. I agree. That's my interpretation as well. Is like he did not intend to assassinate his brother.
No. And if you watch back last episode, he's in this like fighting fury over fear for his son's life. Really, like that's when like this fight between Makar, Baylor, and Sir Lionel like kind of takes off in the background of Duncan Arion's like hand-to-hand combat. So yeah, just tragic. And then also surprised me, because in the book, it's all pretty much one conversation. The conversation about
he doesn't like leave and then come back and then
he doesn't leave and come back, and he doesn't say no like this. He doesn't say like, no, I'm done with princes and walk away. So I was kind of like, oh wow, all right, we're pulling out this conversation a little bit longer. And so so the conversation between Dunk and Egg after this, with Egg having been spying on this entire chat, that doesn't happen in the books either. And that was like just a really, again, beautiful performances here. I don't know, I feel like you can tell that Egg is like grieving himself. I mean, that's a horrible thing to see happen to your uncle, first of all, like to be right in the thick of. But the way that he's grieving, and the way that he is still, like, he's worried for Dunk, I was getting in this moment from Egg. Like the way that the first thing that he says to him is, are you in a lot of pain? And then after like a long pause,
right, those untended wounds after all.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Are you in a lot of pain? ... sir. And like when he adds like the sir, it felt like he was both trying to be like, please talk to me, and also like, I'm still your squire, like please still be a knight. And yeah, the fact that Dunk really kind of breaks his heart in that moment, and leading Egg to say, maybe you're not the knight I thought you were, is just so poetic, given that the reason Egg ran to Dunk in the first place to try to help Tanzel and the other puppeteers is because he had this really deep belief that Dunk was the best possible knight that he could find in the realm, and that he had utmost faith that Dunk would always do the right thing. So the fact that Dunk is kind of breaking that vision within Egg by rejecting him, by saying like, I don't want anything to do with you and your family. Yeah, it was a heartbreaking little moment. And then, boom.
Egg's disappointment in Dunk prompts a flashback to shortly before Sir Arlen died. The old sick knight is telling the story of his name, but Dunk has a more pressing topic to discuss. Why did Sir Arlen never knight him? So Arlen tells a story about how when a lord calls his banners and sends boys off to war, it's customary for each to nail a penny on the oak in the square, and if we return, to take it down. Which is something that Dunk does at the very end of the episode, and signifying that he is perhaps going off to war. But I really almost lost my mind in this scene because he says, "Why did you never knight me?" And then it looks like Sir Arlen is about to die.
I thought he was like dead.
Thus proving that Dunk was never knighted. Now, there was also one other thing that happened this episode that kind of pointed in one direction or the other, which is when Lionel Baratheon says, the gods don't favor a fraud. And then Dunk says, why have they favored me? And he says it with such spirit that it's like, oh, I really don't think Dunk thinks he's a fraud in that moment, you know? So that made me think, oh, maybe Dunk is knighted. But like I said, it's not really that important whether or not he was. It's like, why was the information withheld from us? And then I thought that I was going to be proven wrong by the show. I thought, like, I gave this whole long speech in the last podcast episode about how, like, it's not really important why he, you know, whether or not he was, just like ponder why it was withheld from you. Yeah. And then the show seems to be about to reveal whether or not he was knighted, thus repudiating everything I said last episode. And then, of course, it doesn't do that, and it's very, very funny. What was your reaction, Kim?
Yeah, I was also like, yeah, I was pretty stunned into silence. Why, like, the why did you never knight me question was like, I was like, oh, they're going there. And then, yeah, similarly, like, he asks the question,
why did you never knight me? Did you think I'd leave you?
The shot then holds on Sir Arlen while Dunk continues talking, saying, like, is it because you thought I would leave you? Like, I would never do, like, you know, all this stuff. But I was sitting there being like, the light just left Sir Arlen's eyes. Like, that man is not moving. Oh God, like, he's dying, he's dead. Dunk doesn't realize it. And then, of course, like, Dunk seems to be like thinking the same thing after a second. And then when he, like, his little like gasp back to life, I was like, oh my God, I'm being trolled so hard.
Yes.
Like,
and that's why they call it the penny tree.
It's definitely a troll. I think it's definitely meant to, like, you know, to target people who have been wondering whether or not he was actually knighted or not.
Right. But like, even inserting that, it makes me think that they're going to continue teasing out this question or Dunk's history.
I don't think so. I don't
think this is the end of it?
I think this is the end because we do see this scene at the end where Arlen rides in a different direction. Right?
That's true. That's true. That would be a nice little end cap on it. I guess part of the reason I say that is because in the future novellas, we're still in Dunk's point of view, and he still has these like thoughts back to his time before the story. But maybe that is the last that we'll see of him. But I just couldn't believe it because I'm sitting here being like, okay, there was already like a 90, let's say 9% chance that Dunk wasn't knighted.
Right. And now this is going to prove it. We're finally going to have proof.
And now it's like 99.5% sure. Because I'm like, all right, I guess I'm not, I don't know why this is where my brain goes, but I'm sitting here being like, they still didn't give us a definitive answer because presumably Arlen could knight Dunk right then 100%, and there after this 100%, conversation.
100%. Right. The whole point of the scene is to be like, hey, this question that has never been answered, we're about to answer it definitively, and then they don't answer it definitively.
Yeah.
Like it is really meant to troll, honestly, people like you and me talking about it. And listeners of this podcast.
But I kind of love it. I love the troll.
Oh, it was an amazing moment. I was howling. I was howling. I can't believe they did that. Yeah. Now, was that in the book at all? Like,
no.
I assume no. Right? Yeah, this is completely invented to troll people. Yeah.
No. So. And like, and Dunk, like that shot of Dunk, in this scene when he also believes Sir Arlen has died and he kind of like hangs his head again. He's sitting exactly the way young Dunk was in the flashback last week after Rafe's death, when he was like all alone and was looking like, and then spots Sir Arlen out the window like right before he sees him. And yeah, I just it was whiplash for me because I was also like laughing my fucking ass off. This is insane. And then I was like, this is so sad. Like we're seeing the most intimate, one of the more intimate moments before Dunk loses what he thought was his family. And also the fact, like, it's also just an interesting character point that Dunk apparently has never asked him about this until he thinks Sir Arlen is dying. You know, like that's also.
I don't know that he thought Sir Arlen was dying in that moment. Like he had asked him before. You know, like he thought he was dying in the middle of the question. You know, but anyway.
I don't know. That's I'm like the timeline of the flashbacks is also interesting to me because they show the one where we got to see Sir Arlen's massive dong was like the first time that they show him kind of like inspecting a cut on his arm.
Yes.
And yeah, like the implication is that he got an infection from the cut and then got like a cold because they were sleeping out in the rain and everything and like died after. I think it just says like a few days in the book.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because he definitely has that cut with a bandage on his arm in the flashback. So yeah.
And they're at the location where Dunk buried him. You know?
Right. Yeah.
So I'm like, is this hours before he died? Is this a day before he died? I don't know.
My interpretation is the show is deliberately not answering those questions.
That's
true. And so there's no point in like spending time on it, in my opinion.
My brain can't help it sometimes, Dave.
Yeah, that's fine. I understand. Anyway, back in the present day, Dunk is drinking at the funeral for Sir Humphrey Beesbury. When he sees Daron, Dunk confronts the prince. They talk about the difference between Mad Arion and Egg. Dunk antagonizes Daron, saying the knights are dead because of him, which I think is a little bit too much. You know, I think it's not just because of Daron. Like, obviously, Arion is more at fault. But yes, Daron shares about how Arion is like really not a good person.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, we also learned that Arion has been sent away, right? To somewhere else. You recall where, by the way, Kim?
He's being sent to Lys, which is one of the it's in Essos. It's one of the free cities.
Yeah, what does that mean? First of all, that's hella far, is my understanding, right?
It's pretty far.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like you know, Lys and the free cities is kind of, it's like one of like the trading outposts in Essos. I feel like what we hear most about the free cities is that it's like that's where sellswords come from, or like different religions, customs. It's just sort of like a different cultural hub, I would say, in West or in Essos. I'm pretty sure that's where Daemon goes in House of the Dragon season 1, when he's just like off living with his wife and kids and kind of like pretending not to be part of the realm anymore. So it's sort of like known as like, I think, a place where one can either be exiled or sort of self-isolate for a bit and like still be plugged into like a metropolis, for lack of a better word, of the world. But it's a very distinct removal from Westeros. And so yes, it's effectively a punishment that Maekar is giving Aerion, while also kind of being like, I just don't want to deal with you anymore. I think you're causing too much trouble in Westeros, and you can go cause trouble somewhere where it doesn't affect our crown. Is kind of what it feels like.
I do think it's a little bit of a loss to not have Aerion really in this episode at all. I mean, he is there because Egg tries to murder him, but like we don't really get any sort of resolution from him as a waking character.
No,
but
which we don't in the books either. In the books, we don't even. There's not even like this obvious, not obviously, but there's not this scene of Egg going into his room and seeing his father. It just says Aerion's been sent. Like you almost assume that he's like in a wagon already gone from Ashford.
That's what I assume too. And then we have the scene later where Egg sees his blonde hair start to grow in again, and it triggers him to go and potentially try to kill Aerion. But of course, his father is there. So, and let me just tell you, as somebody who also shaves his head to kind of keep that look that Egg has, I am also annoyed when hair shows up at the top there, because it's like, now I got to deal with this. So
I believe it.
A lot of solidarity with Egg there. Anyway, Dunk arrives with a counteroffer for Egg to be a squire on the road, but this time Maekar refuses. And I have to say, Maekar's reaction is pretty reasonable. He says, I forbid him to live as a peasant. Aegon is the blood of the dragon. He cannot sleep in ditches and eat hard salt beef. End quote, which, you can imagine someone of the royal family would not want that for their child. And but I do think like the thing that Dunk makes a really good case of like how, hey, your other sons who are complete fuck ups, you raised them in this way and it didn't go so well for you, did it? And so like maybe they need to try something drastically different. But then Maekar says he's my last son, which I think is just what do you make of that sentence? He's my last son, Kim. What was your interpretation?
I thought first of like, that he's the youngest. It's like that Maekar might feel as though Egg is like the last chance he has at raising a son he's proud of.
Right. That was my big interpretation. It was like that's what he means by last son, right?
Yeah. And I guess the second meaning there might be that because his wife has so recently died. So I don't know if I should say so recently. I believe it's implied that she died within the last year or so of this tournament. And maybe that he's implying like, I have no intention to remarry. Like this is my last child. Like also, like I'm not going to get another child. And that line is not in the books. Like so much of this exchange between Maekar and Dunk is lifted straight from the books, but ending on that note wasn't. And I think that matters.
It's a beautiful, profound line, I thought.
Yeah.
So. And
it's almost like it's like he gives him the like judgmental answer first of like, my son's too good for this life that you live.
Right.
And then it almost feels like a like confession, like he's like admitting like, and also the reason I don't want him to go is because he's my boy and I love him. And if Aerion's about to be exiled, and we know Aemon is off at the Citadel training to become a maester, and Daron is seemingly just drunk all the time, it's kind of hard to have a relationship with an addict like that, even if it's your child. So yeah, Maekar genuinely probably does feel as though Aegon is like the most present and I don't know, like vulnerable of his children.
With the most potential.
With the most potential. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dunk returns to his tree and is surprised by Raymond and his old horse Sweetfoot coming to see him off. Raymond has bought him back. Very, very sweet. And but then Dunk refuses to take him and gives the horse back to Raymond, and it's very nice moment. But just as Dunk is heading away from Ashford Meadow, Egg appears and says his father ordered him to be Dunk's squire. They set off, bantering about where to go next. And then they describe. Egg claims that there are actually 9 kingdoms, not 7.
Yeah.
And then we see a title flash to A Knight of the 9 Kingdoms.
I was cracking up at that.
Well, so a couple things. This sequence at the end of the show clearly takes inspirations from 2 of the greatest works of pop culture over the course of the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is, and I know everyone is thinking this. I'm just saying what's obvious. It's at the tip of everyone's tongue. Okay. The first one is the Fast and Furious 7 movie, Furious 7. When we all know Vin Diesel and Paul Walker drove off in different directions into the sunset. And in a very similar fashion, we see Sir Arlen's ghost go off into one direction while Dunk and Egg go off in the other direction. Guys, like, it's almost a shot for shot of that final sequence in Furious 7. All right?
Yeah.
So, like, clearly, Ira Parker, huge fan of the D's. Second thing, so the second work that I know everyone's thinking about, it's on everyone's mind, I'm just again stating it, is Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney Plus, right? Spoilers for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but at the very end of that, which is a terrible show in my opinion, at the very end of the series, Falcon like spends the whole series figuring out how to become Captain America. Mm-hmm. And he's like, because you may recall at the end of, I believe, Avengers Endgame, Captain America gave Falcon the shield, and he's like, now you're Captain America. But it turns out in order for the show to have something to do with the Falcon character, he actually rejects that mantle and then spends the whole series learning how to be Captain America. And then at the very end, you see the text flash on screen, Captain America and the Winter Soldier. So the title of the show was actually different this whole time.
I see.
I'm telling you, I swear to you, it is like the exact same. Like, the font is in the same position on the screen when it cuts to black and is like, and now it's a different title of the show.
I love it.
So all that said, Kim, what the hell is going on here? Is this show actually called A Knight of the 9 Kingdoms? Like, I don't think so, right? Like, it's probably going to still be A Knight of the 7 Kingdoms next season. What is going on?
I don't think so. I think that was a little joke title card, like a breaking of the fourth wall.
Okay, so tell me
moment.
What does it mean? Like, why is Egg able to identify 2 additional kingdoms, do you think?
Okay, yes. Because this is like a technicality that even I had forgotten about in all of the Game of Thrones Zean knowledge, but that Westeros, before Aegon came to conquer Westeros, Westeros was divided up into 7 kingdoms.
Which Aegon, by the way?
Oh, sorry, Aegon the Conqueror.
Okay, not the one in the show.
No, not this Aegon. Okay. I'm saying like Aegon the Conqueror arriving to Westeros. He came and there were an established 7 kingdoms. In the course of them establishing their new monarchy and rules and all that jazz, they merged 2 of the kingdoms to just become like the Riverlands, basically. And then they created it's the opposite. They split that area into like 2 sections, right? So now we have the Riverlands and the Reach, I believe. And then they basically created the Crown Lands. So King's Landing, that wasn't like a castle that existed before Aegon came. It's called King's Landing because that's the place where Aegon came and declared himself king, like landed with his dragons. And so establishing King's Landing as the like capital city basically of this continent, they then established the Crown Lands around it. So that's one of the 9 quote unquote kingdoms that Egg lists off.
Crownlands, Westlands, Stormlands, Riverlands, the Iron Islands, the North, the Reach, the Vale of Arryn, and Dawn.
So everyone still says the 7 kingdoms, but Egg is correct that there are technically 9 territories that are outlined in the map. but it's like, I think that this whole scene is meant to be like, again, establishing that Egg has like a bookish knowledge of the world around them that Dunk couldn't possibly have. And just kind of like poking fun a little bit at like book readers and all of like the George R. Martin isms of this, because like the novel is called A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. The Seven Kingdoms are still referred to constantly in this time, like contemporaneously. Right. It's just been kind of like the detail has been lost on people that there's technically 9 areas. Oh, also the other reason why the number changed is because of Dorne. I believe Dorne was not officially considered part of the Seven Kingdoms when Aegon first conquered Westeros. Right. That came later.
Gotta say, kind of an odd note to end on. I like, with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier becoming Captain America and the Winter Soldier, that at least, I thought the show was not very good, but that at least made sense as like, he's finally Captain America. This is just kind of like odd. I guess it's just kind of a book reader thing, because as a show watcher, it kind of, yes, it reinforces the point that Egg knows stuff, but then I'm like, wait, so is the show gonna
be called this from now on? Is the show gonna
be called Knight of the Nine Kingdoms next season? Like, what is that? Like, it's very strange, I think, as a book, as a sort of show watcher perspective. So,
it was one of my little the initial conversation I just thought was like funny, and then the title card made me go like, huh, like, yeah, okay, that's a choice, and then and then the choices kept coming.
Yeah. Well, so then that's the end of the show, or the season, I should say. But there is a post-credit scene, which, by the way, generally doesn't happen Marvel. In Game of Thrones.
No, it's rare.
Revealing that Maekar did not, in fact, order Egg to squire for Dunk. That it was something that Egg made up and then fled. And I thought that was a fun little moment to end on. Like, that's kind of cool. I like that. I'm glad that was like the actual ending of the show. All that said, Kim, is this from the books? Is it?
No.
Is it clear that Egg was not authorized to join Dunk from the books?
No, it's not. Although, as we've discussed, the books and the show for the most part is all from Dunk's perspective, right? So like, it makes sense that we're never shown exactly what happened between Maekar and Egg. But no, in the books, it's a much more straightforward moment of like Maekar coming to Dunk's tree. They have this conversation where Maekar initially offers him knighthood at Summerhall and to like be in their family. And Dunk counters in that moment with being like, I'll let Egg, or I'll keep on Egg as my squire, but I want to do it like the Hedge Knight way. And then Maekar has this line about like, I forbid him to live as a peasant. He's the blood of the dragon. He cannot sleep in ditches and eat hard salt beef. And then in the book, it's like, there's like a pause like Dunk doesn't say anything long enough that Maekar prompts him to say like, what's on your mind? Like, what is it that you want to tell me? And then Dunk replies with his line about like, Daeron never slept in ditches, and all the meat that Aeron ate was rare and bloody. And then it's just kind of like left at that. And Maekar leaves. Like, Maekar seemingly like takes that into consideration and leaves. And then the next day, Egg arrives at the camp and is like, my dad said I'm to be your squire.
Interesting.
And Dunk just kind of like takes that on face value.
What is in the show does not conflict with what's in the books.
No.
But it potentially fills in a gap that was left in the books, right?
Right. Like, I think reading the book, it would be reasonable to question if Egg is being truthful in that moment.
Sure.
But the way that the conversation is left, I feel like when I was reading it the first time, I was like, oh, Dunk like successfully convinced Maekar that Egg might be better off than his brothers by living a different type of life. And then, the show seems to be making it clear that that is not like Maekar did not change his mind. And Egg did once again just sneak off and run away.
I think it is pretty implausible that Maekar has already gone to great lengths in this episode. I think it is pretty implausible that he would like finally be okay with Egg action. Like it was reasonable to me to conclude that Maekar would have some hard lines about what he's willing to let Egg do.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of actually seeing the story come to life in TV, is that like Maekar on the page, it's hard to get a clear read on what kind of guy Maekar is, or like exactly what all of his emotions are in this moment. I think that the performance in this episode added a lot of depth to how attached he is to his children. And it does make sense that he did not change his mind. Egg just snuck away. But it does make me think like, like, are they gonna like, send out a massive search party now for like, it lays the groundwork for season 2, presumably, to be like, does Maekar just assume that they're together and he accepts that, or are they now on the run technically from House Targaryen? Because that is not made super clear in the book. So
I would assume Maekar is going to tell a very nice story about it. Like I have this. It was my idea to send him off with Dunk, and it's a brand new wilderness program. Anyway, Kim Renfro, closing thoughts on season 1 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
Oh man, closing thoughts are beautifully done adaptation, and continues. I have found this to be a very surprising story with which to process my own feelings about the world and what it means to try to do the next right thing, even when it feels like there isn't a good option, what it means to stand up for your friends or allies. And I'm so grateful that we have this version of Sir Duncan the Tall and little Aegon Targaryen on our screens. I think that it's just been a very delightful peek into a different part of George R. R. Martin's world. And I'm happy for it.
I agree. I think this was pretty much a home run. Amazing casting, great scope for the show, very limited in scope in terms of telling just a brief snapshot of these people's lives, taking place primarily in one location, which is not something that Game of Thrones has typically done in the past, and showing some of the most badass night combat that we have seen on any show in recent memory, with a very earnest and positive message about doing the right thing, doing what's honorable, even when the world seems aligned against it. Yeah, just have pretty much nothing but positive things to say about A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the TV adaptation. So thank you so much for sticking with us. We have a couple more things to discuss before we wrap up today. I do want to mention a couple emails we got at castofkings@gmail.com. We got an email from longtime listener Pat, who wrote in with a gentle correction to you, Kim Renfro, last week. You heard Kim assert that Sir Arlen of Pennytree fought on the side of the Blackfires, but Sir Arlen fought against the Blackfires as a member of the forces loyal to King Daeron. End quote. So, Kim,
I was wrong.
I assume you agreed with this correction.
I did. So, I agree with the correction. Thank you, Pat, for catching me. It does matter at the end of the day, I think, to know who was on what side of different rebellions and all that jazz. So yes, Sir Arlen fought and died for the true crown. Not fought and died. His squire fought and died. He fought for the true crown.
Liam writes into castofkings@gmail.com. We talked about this is from Liam writes into castofkings@gmail.com. Like, what are the implications of making it so that the crowd was not on Dunk's side, right? When he decided to go into the trial of the Seven. And Liam writes, to me, this seems likely to have been a choice made to make Baelor's decision to join Dunk appear all the more honorable. If honor is choosing to do the morally right thing, even when it represents the more difficult path. The fact that supporting Dunk doesn't come with the obvious support of the people makes Baelor's choice appear all the more honorable, especially as heir apparent. In doing so, he almost grants the crowd permission to support this lowly hedge knight, even against the prince, end quote. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting take on that question.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
but,
I do like that take.
So, because I think you were disappointed that the crowd wasn't more on his side, and there are some narrative functions for why they didn't do it that way on the show.
Yeah.
And Liam is pointing to one of them. Yeah.
And it made the way that the crowd joined in on saying like up Dunk when Egg was yelling at him. Like it made I think that it also made that moment a little bit more impactful. Yeah.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.